Why I invested $40,000 in Lukso. In this video we will go through Lukso, my largest bag, from the developer of the original Ethereum team. Hi there, this is StantheMetaman and this is your daily crypto meta video update. So guys, let's check out this picture. This is the picture of the Ethereum team from 2015. We have Vitalik here, we have Gavin here, we have Fabian here, and Charles Hoskinson was also the member of this team, but unfortunately he's not on this photo. So if we can check out, Vitalik is the founder of Ethereum at this stage, and Ethereum is at around 300 billion market cap. We have Gavin Wood, who is from the original Ethereum team, and Polkadot is at around 16 billion market cap at this stage. Charles Hoskinson was also the part of this team, and ADA is at 43 billion at this stage. And we have Fabian, who is the founder of Lukso. His project is at around 200 million at this stage. So you definitely can see that there is no correlation between that, which is quite interesting. And if we would follow the trend here, we would see that this project, it should at least catch up to the valuations of at least Polkadot, but from my point of view, even higher. There were some huge news for Lukso recently. They happened just yesterday, basically, that they've got listed on Crypto.com, which is huge. It is a US exchange, which is very nice. It's pretty official. It's pretty well known. So in the last bull market 2 years ago, they were buying out the arena in Los Angeles as well. And I think it's one of the main gateways for people in the US to actually move into crypto. They probably have Crypto.com and essentially Coinbase as well. So this is something very interesting, because before that Lukso was only on KuCoin, and Crypto.com is like interesting large exchange as well, which definitely helps us to understand that it will be listed on more and more projects moving forward as well. It was also launched on Ledger around 2 months ago, which kind of went, like pretty hidden. So not a lot of people were discussing it in the community, but it's also interesting. It shows that there is a demand for this project, and a lot of people, they're actually storing their Lukso on cold wallets, like crazy amounts of Lukso and crazy amount of funds and crazy amounts in terms of the percentages of the portfolios that they have in Lukso. One of the main features of Lukso is universal profile, and essentially the core focus of this platform is to improve the user experience of crypto. So a normie can go use Web3 products, create things without getting to know like wallets, chains, networks, like have a possibility to lose part of the money or even have a need to buy something in the first place. Very interesting and exciting thing about Lukso that will probably drive high adoption is that you don't have to hold tokens of the chain, of the blockchain, in order to use the products, in order to use the DApps that are connected with the blockchain. And this feature essentially is called relay transactions. And the whole idea of this thing is that you can be using Web3 products and you can transact. There is a service that is taking care of the fees on the end of the user. So it's a very nice thing in terms of the onboarding people into the whole thing, because I would say because it's a kind of aggressive environments where in order to use anything, you have to spend money right away. This is not a Web2 experience. And if it would be Web2 experience in the first place, we would definitely not see like this level of adoption of Web2 websites and functionalities and things like that. So with these universal profiles, you would be able to access different DApps, and it has more like this look of Instagram-like page. So Web2 experience, even some luxury experience and things like that. So just check out this design, check out this page, check out these profiles that a bunch of people created already. I click create a profile and I'm getting transferred to a very nice page as well, where you can see this background, you can see these buttons, you can see these shadows, this overlay, you can see these icons. Just work of art in terms of the UI design, and UX is pretty straightforward. So just create a profile. So I was creating a profile. There are quite a few steps, I would say, in the process. So maybe this is something that they can optimize from their end, but probably they have to have this amount of steps just to make sure that people would be able to kind of enter the whole thing and do everything properly and be secured because essentially it's also a storage of value. So people should treat it seriously. But at the same time, the user experience is way more interesting and way more Web2-like in comparison to Web3 products. And it's also safer because you don't have to spend money to perform transactions and things like that. So there are not a lot of DApps on Lukso, but as far as we know, they're essentially in the process of building out. So there are a bunch of hackathons that are planned in January for the product. and we would be expecting a lot of DApps essentially coming out and being built, and probably Luxa will essentially be supporting them, providing them with grants and things like that. So it's a default process of essentially having engineers build stuff on the platform and then work on the thing. An interesting part is that Lux is focused on creative economy, which is huge since the establishment of social media from like early, like late zeros, so 2000s. And that's a very, very huge thing from my point of view. It's very straightforward, and creative economy, like currently the crazy money that are being made to social media, you can basically sell anything on social media in any industry. There are things like OnlyFans, which I think it's a very, very nice and great idea to basically build OnlyFans on Luxa. I think it's something that this platform can actually thrive on as well in terms of having the service like this, because it's all about this luxury feeling that you're getting when using this platform. Like if you would compare this to luxury websites like Louis Vuitton and others, it's a very nice, interesting feeling from the UI point of view, from visuals point of view, from user experience as well. I'm just a huge fan of like how they're structuring things and how it shows on the screen. It's a very great type of work from these things, and it definitely shows that the main core, the main part of their vision is to revolutionize the user experience, not to kind of make it for crypto geeks anymore, but onboard a bunch of normies, like a bunch of girls that, you know, just only know how to use Instagram, and this platform that it would be very intuitive to them as well, because it kind of has like the same feeling. It's very visual, and women, they're mostly driven by visuals as well. So that's why like I think Instagram is mostly being used by women. It's very visual type of things, and there are some other applications as well. And it's a large user base that is not being covered much by any crypto products that you see out there on the market at this stage. So in terms of the other things that I wanted to highlight as well, they have a pretty active GitHub, which is always great for the project. So the worst thing is when you check out some product and you see that like their GitHub is dead, the last commit was like several months ago, nothing is getting updated and things like that. So these guys are building. These are proper engineering development teams that are working on the product, and we see that there are updates 6 hours ago, 18 hours ago, 2 days ago. So 6 hours ago, that means that the guy is working like on Saturday or like very, very late. Oh, maybe he's just based in the US. So there are definitely some team members from the US in Luxa team, but based on the conferences and accents that I heard from people who were presenting stuff, it's a very interesting type of dynamic that they have in terms of the updates, things they're building and things like that. So I do like to see a lot of development going on in different products, and this thing, yeah, it's definitely a plus here because the GitHub is very, very active. And LinkedIn, they actually have pretty nice LinkedIn as well, because if you would check LinkedIn on some projects, you might often find that like some guy is working in different companies, some guy is open to work, some guy is starting his consultant business and things like that. So it's bearish for the project. But in this case, we see the proper team, they're working. And I actually wanted to share something about the investments. So speaking about the Crunchbase, they raised $18 million around 2 years ago, so in February 2021, and it actually 3 years ago. One of the concerns that I usually have with the project is what is the burn rate and how much money they actually have left, and whether or not they would be planning to invest or raise capital and things like that. And if you would be following my last video about Luxa, you probably saw that there were interesting teasing going on in between Andreessen Horowitz and Luxa. So maybe they're in discussions in terms of the fundraising and things like that. I wanted to do a quick calculations. So we have 62 people in total working on Luxa on LinkedIn, and some of these people, they can actually just input in the LinkedIn page that they're working in Luxa, and in reality they are not working there. And at the same time, some people that are working in Luxa, they cannot like actively lead the LinkedIn pages, be active there, so they might not essentially put something that they are working in Luxa. The interesting thing for us is try to figure out the burn rate that this company might have, to figure out how much cash they might still have in the bank, and whether or not they would be fundraising soon, because this one of the main things in terms of figuring out like what's the situation in the company currently and how the things are going, and whether or not we should expect like a fundraising soon. Because if they're running out of cash and if they should be fundraising soon and they're not doing so, that's bearish from one point of view. Or maybe they've fundraised like somehow secretly, so you won't have any information about it anywhere on the public websites. Or maybe they're in the process of negotiation in terms of like fundraising and where there's going to be like an equity raise or essentially based on SAFT and tokens and things like that. So pretty straightforward and simple calculations. We have 62 employees and they're based in Berlin. So it's obviously a first world country with crazy taxes. One of the things I wanted to figure out is what's the jurisdiction of the foundation of Lukso, because if they, for example, like based somewhere in Dubai, that's very straightforward and nice, but I was not able to find any information in terms of where essentially the LLC is set up, because if it's Germany, yeah, it shows Germany. So there's a high chance that there are crazy taxes there, and it's not a high chance, it's there are crazy taxes in Germany. So let's say we have these 62 employees and average salaries like with blockchain engineers and other guys, but obviously there are some members of staff. I'm sure there are very good UI and UX designers and copywriters and people who are essentially leading the social media departments as well. Let's take 80,000 euro as average salary, which would bring us to like 6,000 euro a month. So I would say it's a bit on the higher end for Germany. People, it might be the case along with taxes, but usually that would be somewhere on the higher end. So I would say 80k in terms of average, that's a bit high. I would probably pick 12k. That might be somewhere around right in terms of the average. I think the taxes in Germany, they're about 50%, and like the company is obviously paying more, but they might have different setups in terms of how they're paying people. Maybe they're paying some people as contractors. Maybe they have some different entity that they're sending funds to, and they essentially have less profit after that and things like that. And I don't think that they're actually like generating any revenue at this stage. So it might be beneficial from the taxes point of view, that the fact that they're not generating revenue, because usually profits are being taxed. So let's pick 75k as an average. By 62 people a year, that's around 5 million. So that's a very rough overview, but we have around 4.55 million burn rate for the amount of team members that they have for each year. If you remember, they fundraised the funds 3 years ago. So which should put us at around 15 million in terms of the whole money that they spent so far. They probably had to provide some funds for exchanges as well, in terms of giving them liquidity and the market makers as well. And they might be giving out like from 150 to 450 per exchange. I definitely think that in terms of the crypto.com, they've provided several $100,000 in terms of actually having some liquidity there. So I would say they probably might have spent at this stage from somewhere around 12 million to 16 million. And based on this information, they should have from 2 to 6 million in the bank at this stage, which following the burn rate should sustain them for from half a year to a year. So we should probably see a fundraising event happening soon, some type of news from their end. And if it won't happen, it would be a bit bearish. But even if they have only half a year to sustain in terms of the current funds and things like that, I think there is still high chance that they would be able to fundraise moving forward, because everyone saw that like this first wave of the bull market here, I'm not sure if we will continue. It seems like we might go a bit up and then correct. But at the same time, a lot of VCs, they understand the potential of this thing. They understand the narrative. They are being teased by Andreessen Horowitz already, and they're having some exchanges in terms of the things like that. I think that we should soon see some information about the fundraising happening on Lukso, which essentially would be a bullish event. And I think it might be one of the events that would essentially push the price up, because everyone wouldn't understand if the VCs are injecting capital, they're planning to make ROI on this, they're planning to exit. Therefore, they will be pushing the price up and essentially exiting and taking profits on the correction once it would go up and once it would be corrected. So that's essentially a pretty straightforward thing. In terms of the LinkedIn, that's the LinkedIn that I like to see. There are a lot of people in Berlin, and essentially there are a lot of people in Eastern Europe as well, like countries like I think like Warsaw I saw, right? I don't like to see teams based in India and Pakistan in crypto projects. It just, I'm not racist, it's just like on average in terms of the quality of work that they produce, on average, if you would take in between the industry, it might be a bit lower in comparison to guys in Europe. And essentially having most of the team based in countries like Germany, in EU, that's quite bullish, and United Kingdom as well. I think that some of the guys, they might not work full time because, for example, this person, right? So I have, so as you see, all right, co-founder, advisory board member, and then business consultant. So this is quite interesting. It's definitely, if she's a co-founder, she cannot invest most of her time into working on this product. So that's probably right. But yeah, in terms of the team, German guys, everyone knows quality of products that German guys are putting out on the market. And as we see, based just on this picture, just on this UI, just on these implementations, it's just beautiful. Some other things that I wanted to highlight as well, that they have a pretty nice activity in terms of their own YouTube channel. So it's only 2K subscribers, but it's usually the way it is. And before it will pump, it will stay this way. But it's great that they're on the conferences. I think they've been in Warsaw recently, in Berlin as well, on the conferences that they're talking about the product. We see the hackathons, which is bullish because it means that there would be more dApps appearing on the platform and essentially more people working on the whole thing as well. And it would result in us having more dApps, more users and things like that. And again, I think building OnlyFans on Luksa is a very, very nice play. But obviously it's kind of like a threshold to enter, because you would probably need to partner up with some OnlyFans agencies in order to provide models and provide processes and things like that. There is not a lot of coverage on Luksa in terms of YouTube. My video from nine days ago is essentially one that's popping out. We have couple too as well. But I think the more as we move forward, we would obviously see more and more videos, especially once the price would pump. And we see a pretty nice trajectory in terms of it slowly going up and up and up. And it's my largest bag. I still think that I'm kind of underexposed to it. So the things that I would be doing, because I bought a bunch of shit coins in BRC recently, if we would go to 48K, I would be planning to take profits on them and rebalance some of the profits into Luksa as well. So last but not least is community. And community is very bullish on Luksa. Like everyone is comparing like their market valuation with Polkadot, with ADA, and like they are essentially providing targets like 300x from here and 200x from here. It's possible in the bull market, and I think it has pretty nice narrative in terms of achieving that it's creator economy. That's like I would say the most bullish narrative of last decade. And on top of that, they have user experience, which is the most bullish narrative for crypto this decade. Because I was saying like even a couple of years ago in the last bull market that companies that would focus on user experience in crypto, that will essentially improve the adoption through improvement of the user experience, they would be valued the most. It's a very simple logic. Just because they will be introducing dApps and crypto market to more people, therefore there will be more liquidity coming into the market as well, more the users, more transactions. So it's a pretty straightforward thing. So there are a bunch of people that are bullish on Luksa, and the guy is showing that he was actually able to buy it on Crypto.com, which is quite nice. CoinGecko. Interesting thing that kind of makes Luksa bullish as well is that following all these narratives that you have, like the funds, the LinkedIn, the team is working, blockchains, hackathons and things like that, there is a high chance that exchanges would eventually onboard Luksa. And the fact that you can assess and know from your end is that once they would be onboarded in the exchanges, it will definitely pump. We're not sure on like how much and things like that, but it's a very interesting thesis that if the product is solid, if exchanges understand that they will have volumes once they would essentially onboard this thing, and if this project have liquidity to provide to exchanges, because each launch on the exchange, it might be from like 100 to 500k, depending on how much liquidity the project is giving to the exchanges. So if they have these funds, and they obviously have these funds, it's essentially a very nice and interesting thesis to have, because Luksa is not on a lot of exchanges currently, which means that it will be onboarded on more exchanges, which means that it will pump. So it's a very nice interesting post from Fabian, who is the founder of Luksa and original developer of Ethereum ERC20 standard. So he's saying that standards for NFTs and profiles and tokens are final currently. So he sees them at final. And then he adds, but it's important to understand that nothing is final until it is adopted and widely used, which is a very nice and important point that you would like to hear from the end of the founder, because you would understand how the guy is essentially thinking from his point of view. This standard will not move into final status until we see that adoption. And we see experience. We see see the things that he lived through himself. He understands the market. He knows how things are working. So I've put ERC20 into final stage in September 2017, 1.5 years after the ICOs and mass adoption happened. So there was a delay in 18 months from the finalization of ERC20 standard till the adoption of this standard. I think in our case, it will happen faster with Lukso, just of the fact that the market is moving faster currently, there is more liquidity, there are more people, so it will definitely happen faster in this case. I really like the thought process that this specialist, this professional, this founder has in this case. It's very bullish from my point of view. And I saw some of his posts as well that like we're not kicking off active marketing in this stage just because of the fact that we need a good product in the first place. And in business, you always should focus on the product and service that you're working on in terms of the improvement of the whole thing. Because in the ideal business scenario, your product or your service is so good that it does not need any marketing. It does not need any selling, because if you provide it to one customer, he understands that he's given and he's provided with so much value that he would be referring the product to everyone else essentially around him, and you would just go organically from how good your product is. So kind of in business, and especially in that case with the amount of funding that they have, and maybe they're still in the fundraising process, and maybe actually the next round in terms of the fundraising would be the funds that they would be planning to spend on marketing, because this is usually the case. They spend some on engineering. They've been engineering for 3 years for the funds that they've raised, and now the logical direction is to raise funds to spend them on marketing essentially, and then market the product. But the core thing here is that when you spend funds on marketing, it does not improve your product. So these are kind of funds that are well spent if you're getting nice ROI from it, but it does not improve your product, it does not improve your service, so you're not getting better in terms of the market, you're not providing more value into the market as well. So marketing and sales, they're obviously very, very important, because you can also create a very, very nice, like an interesting thing, but no one would basically know about. But usually when people understand that the value that's provided by the product is so high to the comparison how much they have to pay for it in terms of maybe even time and money and things like that, usually it's getting like spread very, very well in terms of referrals. Referrals are best type of customers for any business. So these are my two cents from the business point of view. I really like Fabian's thought process here. I see experience. I'm even more bullish after checking out information for this video and checking out and updating myself on the things that are happening with Lukso as well.